Buy, sell or rent your property with Century 21 and you could win a brand new 2-bedroom apartment on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland, Australia. Visit c21prize.co.nz for your chance to win.
Welcome back to Your Property Empire. Well, joining me on the show tonight is Steve Carroll, Head of Sales at realestate.com.au, and we've just been joined by Charles Tarbey, Chairman and Owner of Century 21 Australasia. Good to see you, Charles. Now, obviously, spring was a little quiet. What are your thoughts about summer?
Oh, yes, I think it's going to be very encouraging with banks raising interest rates, banks putting on more or stronger requirements for borrowers.
And you're happy about that, aren't you?
I am. Banks withdrawing from some locations, banks withdrawing from certain types of lending like community title and so on. I think it just makes it a little bit more sensible. It's going to take us into a more sensible marketplace, which I sort of was hoping for this time last year. But with a reduction in interest rates, it kicked on a little bit more than it should have.
Steve, how do you see things at realestate.com?
Well, listings have been quite low, certainly year on year. We've seen things pick up a little bit over the last 2 or 3 weeks. And in fact, Charles, this Saturday, we've got, I think, 3,500 properties going to auction, which is a pretty big number for us if we look back over the last 10 or 11 months.
It should be interesting how many of those we chatted earlier, of those properties that go to auction might be put on the market before the auction date itself. That's a real indication of where the marketplace is at this point in time. So I'm looking closely at that too.
Now, we always have these big Saturdays and things like that. Are there some specific auction dates coming up next year that are going to be big numbers?
Can't talk about next year, but certainly we're watching this Saturday, as I just mentioned to Charles. You know, we think this Saturday is going to be a biggie. And, you know, 3,500 already.
And that's compared to how much is it? What's a normal week look like?
Oh, it would be under 3. So
right.
it's going to be one of the biggest weekends of auctions this side of Christmas, as far as properties for sale on our site is concerned.
And so, is that for the timing? So that's roughly, what, the 10th or something like that of December. Yeah. Do the agents always then need that extra couple of weeks just to kind of tidy things up if it doesn't sell on the day?
I think you definitely will need that time. But the agent's going to be extremely busy at that time also trying to complete transactions for people who have bought and want to move in, because there'll be a significant number of people who want to move in before Christmas, which is usually the way, and a whole lot want to hold out after Christmas. So it'll be a battle all the way around. There'll be a lot of emotional activity going on in the real estate industry prior to Christmas.
Now, you mentioned before in summer that they're after kind of certain things that they're always looking for. Yeah. And do you see that changing throughout the year as well?
Yeah, I mean, changes depending on the season. I mean, obviously I live in Brisbane, and one of the most popular search words is swimming pools. So anything to do with water, we seem to have an increase in views over the summer period.
See, I actually do the contrarian thing. So a lot of people know that I rent for a living.
Yep.
And I buy a lot of beachside units, so we're always trying to rent ours from summer to summer because it's obviously that's when people move to the beach. Yep. And then when I want to rent my place, I'm trying to do it winter to winter because no one's looking for the pool or the view. So again, you've got to look contrarian, haven't you, Charles?
You do.
You've got to try and outsmart some of these agents.
Yeah, well, you rent for a living, you said, and I think you mean that too, because you rent properties out, you rent properties in, you go all around the rental market.
Exactly, but you want to kind of go and do the search when it's the lowest possible demand. And if you're selling or renting out, then you want it completely the other way around.
That's not what happens, is it? Because people talk about hot suburbs all the time. Everybody wants to know the hot suburbs, but by that time, you know, you're pretty much too late. Or you're going to be part of a crowd bidding at an auction.
And that's the thing, is the good suburbs are always there. So, any particular tips for people trying to get those hot properties or hot suburbs?
What, trying to buy in those properties?
Yeah,
well, I mean, at the moment, you have to realise that there's going to be a lot of competition. So, obviously, expect competition. And my advice would be make sure that you have a ceiling on how much you're prepared to pay, whether or not you're looking to rent or whether or not you're looking to buy, and don't get carried away. So that would be. And if you're looking to sell and you're in one of those areas, one of those hot property areas, then it's a good time to be on the market.
Charles, Louis Christopher from SQM Research, he did a housing boom and bust report and was predicting some areas of Australia might be up 10 or 15% next year. So again, if you're in one of these hot suburbs and you want to buy now, is it sometimes worth paying 5 or 10 grand over now?
Yes.
Versus wait till February when it might be 40 grand up?
I think that applies all the time, actually, Chris, because a lot of people will go to an auction, they won't pay their extra $5,000 or $10,000, and they'll spend all this time trying to find something else to replace it. And as you know, with real estate, it's a long-term proposition, and 5 or 10 or 15 or 50 or 100,000 sometimes over a period of a real estate cycle has very little meaning. And I think it's important that if people find something they'd like to buy, that they just push a little bit more. But that ceiling, as you talk about, Steve, is critical. Some people go crazy. If you can afford to go crazy, do it. But there are some people that are on a budget and they do push themselves beyond where they should be.
But also it's knowing what the real price is and how much is emotional spend versus kind of factual spend, isn't it?
I think with home buyers, a lot of it's emotional, and it's the same as, I think you might have said something before the break talking about where people might buy, and you look at the discretionary spending areas. I was chatting to Peter Switzer about that today. A lot of people go on holidays, they go south, they go north, and all of a sudden they fall in love with properties, and so that emotional time, this time now is a very emotional time for people who are thinking about buying, but more so people who are thinking about selling in discretionary spending areas. This is one of their best opportunities right now.
Now, tell us a bit more before we go about this virtual reality, because I went to the Home Buyer show a couple of months ago and some of the developers there had this virtual reality thing. Tell us a bit more.
Yeah, well, REA has been working very closely with Google, and we launched an app quite recently which will enable, as long as you've got a Google phone, you've got the Google Daydream headset, it'll enable you to view a number of properties on realestate.com.au through virtual reality. And you know, Tom Panelson, we were talking earlier on about the benefits of being able to actually go into a house from the home, from the city, back home, have a good look round, and then work out whether or not you actually want to go and see the house in reality, in real, at a later date.
It's very realistic. These guys had me try and walk across a plank between two 15-storey buildings with those,
I wish I'd seen that.
With those glasses on.
Yeah.
And it is really quite extraordinary what you can do, what you can see.
Amazing.
And where you can go with it.
And then can we do that in reality and get you to do it and see how well you do physically?
On my hands, remember? that was a bet last time. But yeah, my son's been into it, and I bought him a virtual reality set for his birthday going back 5-6 months ago. And he loved it. And there's only certain things you can do with it right now in games and whatever else, but it's quite extraordinary.
Yeah, and I think it's going to certainly have impact real estate, but also the travel industry. Because imagine, you know, you're choosing, shall I go to Paris, shall I go to Barcelona? Well, through virtual reality, you can actually spend time in both cities and still be in Australia. Incredible.
Sounds good. Changing world, Charles, all these youngsters coming in.
They are.
Now, let's jump to the auction numbers.
They've been pretty average, an average across the period of time in the sense of their numbers. They were 76 last week, 75 this week, so only slightly down. But the interesting number I always try to match it to is this time last year, and it was 59.2% this time last year. So, and that's been like this for the last few weeks. So there's been a gap of as much as 10 to 20% in some instances across the entire region. The best performing capital city was actually Melbourne this time round, with 79.3, and Sydney came in at 77.7. But the one that excited me the most today was Perth at 67.3%. Now, their clearance rates have been very low, traditionally not an auction state, but if I can see that starting to continue, that's going to give us an indication that maybe the market's started to bottom out in some parts of Perth, and there's your place to start looking.
There'll be a lot of people hoping that's true, so interesting to see. Homes advertised for sale.
Yes, Steve was saying earlier, they've dropped again consecutively the last few weeks now, negative 1.86% over this time last week. Don't have the New Zealand figures, but I know that I've just been there this last week, opening 4 new offices, and the marketplace area, they're talking about a very big slowdown in Auckland, a complete slowdown in real estate. So I don't know if we see an influx of stock coming in that region over the next few few weeks, then we will probably see a bit of a slowdown.
And how about rents?
They've been pretty good, actually. We've had a good year with those. So I'll give you at the end of this season, I've got a chart to show you what the rents have been like and how much they've dropped in each capital city over the year or increased. Our best performer this week was Darwin at 1.85, followed by Melbourne at 1.44. So the other capital cities were a bit patchy, but we had a 1.18% increase over this time last week, which has again given us 2.88% year to date. So they're on the way up, but never going to really improve the yields in some of the prices of properties in Sydney and Melbourne.
And finally, the vacancy rates.
The vacancy rates are doing very, very well. Sydney's been the best performer for quite some time now, and it's come in at 1.92%. You've got also Melbourne, that came in at 3.29%, and Perth, danger zone again, back up to 10.5%. So that's taken us over the fives in vacancy rate, namely due to Perth. And it impacts on my business. I have a large property management portfolio over there in Perth. And when the vacancy rate's at 10+%, it's affecting everybody. Landlords, real estate practitioners, agents are okay, but the people that are benefiting probably are the tenants.
Yeah, wonderful. Quick 10 seconds. Thoughts on 2017? Good or bad for property?
I think it's going to be slow up until Easter. Fingers crossed that after Easter things will pick up.
Steve Carroll from realestate.com. Charles Tarbey from Century 21. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us at home as well. We'll be back next week for the last show for 2016 for Your Property Empire. Until then, I'm Chris Gray. Good night.
The information featured in this program is general in nature and therefore should not be relied upon. Guests appearing on the program may have commercial arrangements with some of the companies mentioned. Before making any investment, insurance or financial planning decisions, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you.